Malo po sa ifo manuia lau fionga sabea ia. Falling mai na mana ia lava le esita had a nice long break and
Yes,
manuia
indeed.
tele le esita and fatalo fo ile malu le tunu o fonga mai le ne fiafi. Ia malo sa ifo manuia.
Malo whaafitai fo I le mafuta mai, ia te outou, loutou pa ia maulunga, ia o whafonga o le tātou polokalame fsoani mai I whaamalmalama I le tunu, ia le tūlanga o le mana o mia o se fale. Tā amata ia te oe Emele, o le tūlanga o lewa e nofo nei ma e mawhau o lewa iei le fale. O luma lea iei le fale, a o tua o lo o awanoa le whanua. O le ale me mua lava, o e te tau na whaipa whai o lo e manatu, e whaatu ia pe whausia fo I sesi no whanga I tua like a sleep out or a minor dwelling. A o lea te mana o mia ina ia ba ai pe fia le tau o lea mea ai pe wha pe I ona no mai ia se vai ngā tu pe wha tino ai ia le wha moe lea.
Ia whaatai mo le fasili sa vea. Pea o le mea mua lava e tā ua tele le mafofau iai mafofau le loto iai. Po le al tonu lava le mele fia ausia. Po o se fale e rent out. Po o se fale e whaatonu o mo whanau. O le a le mafuanga ona o tulanga whaapea tā ua tele le malamalama ai le amataina. I suppose it's a why. I say, what's the long-term plan? Whaapea o se whale lai mana na o e movie ai alo ma whanau. It's a wana mafofau mamao. What if the kids do decide to move out? Wa tulanga o ma whaapea, it will have an impact on our long-term goal. Is it a minor dwelling? Is it a new build, like a sleep out? Is it a full-on house, 3-bedroom? So tulanga whaapea sa una malamalama le, what do you want to achieve? O le a tonu lava le mele fia manao ina ia whaatau nuu. Wa o ie loaila ia pe po lea le me tau na whai. Do we have to get approval for a minor dwelling, a sleep out, which the boys will elaborate a lot more on that. Is it going to be rented out?
Yeah.
Or is it going just to be for the family extent? So the why is very important. Why do we want to do this? Because it's going to cost.
Yeah. All right, we're going to use both languages to conversate because we have Benjamin O'Connor here so that he can sort of catch up and understand where and the issues and the subjects that we're going to discuss here. So now we're going to borrow the funds from the bank. What is the bank's process that you need to know in borrowing this kind of money?
Mana ia tele le fasili sa vea. O le tūlanga mo mua lava, obviously we will look at gathering the information o le tātou income le maua po le tātou tupe le maua mai. We will also then have a look po ani tātou ai tā lafo o iei le teimi nei. What kind of borrowings do we currently have? Ia titila la iei, if everything is gathered together o le tātou income, our current borrowings, our current mortgage, yeah, on the fatala nola, yeah, do we have equity as it is? Is there sufficient equity if improvement? So so once we are happy with the pakeki, so usually I will say, okay, let's go to the bank and see what maximum potential borrowings the bank gonna consider. So at this stage, ono lele ifati no ina le ngalueng o le improvement po le sleep out po le minor dwelling. O lele yes value, tangible value, or tiro yele bank. So at this stage, we're just going on basically your income. On the assumption po le assumed value at completion. Equity sufficient as it is, let's say, Milanay. Malola tato paperwork here. We will then submit the tato application for tato talosanga le bank. Our mailole tato pre-approval. So at this stage, only it's a pre-approval. Now mailele bank for we are happy to lend you for lewa mafafole bank based on your income. Demo mai based on the assumed improved value. We are happy to look at this much. If I see noile ole tato manaonga le fi so at this stage len yam faile na fatalo no lawyer Thomas malana vaenga to look at some possible costing at this stage. So we can then we will also then go back to the bank.
Right.
And say this is what we're looking at. Yona au maila le bank because usually a tato pre-approval will have the main condition at this stage, maybe the valuation on a mana le bank on a saule tangata le, they call them a valuer. Tilo la ia plans le la au maya Thomas malvaenga le. Na maile la to say assumed value at completion. Based on the costings, based on the drawings, the designs, based on letato improvement le lato fai. On a assume le value at completion. So the valuation then will go back to the bank. So if I seen a tell ole back and forth we will then go back to the bank for the valuation layer. Are you happy for us to proceed? Yeah, so our Mailoele bank, if the valuation is okay, we will then go back to Thomas and he can then do the signing contract with again, we'll go back to the bank and sign off. So there's a lot of back and forth here. There's a lot of back and forth. It's only signed by the bank at every stage.
So before I ask you about some other costs to consider, the bank will actually want to see, and cite a blueprint of the renovations and design?
That is correct. Pre-approval is just a figure. We're just looking at a figure. Bank, okay, based on our condition there, improvements here.
Yeah.
So, or improvements like costings here, my Thomas Malelato team, or whatever builder you choose to go with. Or Tamalaya Lela Abel valuer. So the valuer will use the drawings, the designs, the costing layer, and determine the value at the end of the project. My evaluation plus the costings, so if I for the bank, for them to sign off, I let you or let's see the next stage of our process.
Right. So, there are what I was say by the bangle and easy cost to consider for there. I let what I would tell you. These, the Thomas and the team, gets involved earlier in the in this process because the bank actually wants to see the blueprint or the design or the printing of everything that needed to be built or renovated.
So leala sanoanga severe mo melota to pre-approval or le gap la le mitai Thomas or whatever builder mana na ol ainga faonga to determine polaleta to costs wainga design ma me fa pe ona mana o le value yele tulanga le ina ia fulfill le si ya inga le mana o yele bank of the valuation.
All right. Final question before we move on to the gentleman that awaits us from the other side. Once we get the pre-approval for renovations, what are likely some conditions that the bank might decline your application or the pre-approval?
Most of the time itulanga your renovations for improvements. Our mailetato valuation is not up to the level in expected bank. the bank can decline our application at this stage. So whaapea o lana assume ne tātou le valuation at completion pe au mai e miliona. Ai au mai le valuation after looking at the designs, ma costings, e a mai pena o le iwa se la wafe. The bank can at this stage decline and say, oh, we're not happy to lend you that much based on the valuation. Ono o tūlanga lai e tā ua I tele to make sure that we've got sufficient equity as much as possible as before we even look at the value at the renovations, my improvements here. These are all kind of like assumptions at the end. So the more equity we have in our home before we start, the better options or the better flexibility we have. It also based on the market, how the market is going. So the more equity we have before we start, the better. But the bank can decline the tattoo application at this point, which means like we costings to work within the valuation le mate.
Malu whaftai tile lawa Emele wa langa o na pauna fasili ua au mai nei a ta ua leo te wawa atu. E whaisi tele o a fo i o fasili mo le sunga ia Thomas e whapea fo I a Mr. Benjamin O'Connor as the designer. But thank you so much. It's always important, and to me, I look forward to to knowing more and more, because it's easier to explain. I o tātou tangata, ma wha malama atiri ai. Ai o le telefoni lea ale whaletua ia Emele, mwhai ei o na toe talanoa le tātou lava ngana ma wha malama atiri ia te oe. O le o lua fitu, walu tolu fitu, walu wha, walu o, toe wha whonga numero le nā. O lua fitu, walu tolu fitu, walu wha, walu o. Manuia malolonga le nei e fiafi, tātou tuli mata I fo I le vai a sufou, ia masisi fo I wha popongo le talanoanga, Malu I Fale lau e fionga le wharatua, ai wha soifu I o mo le tem nei.
Ia, wha soifu manuia le fiafi.
Ia, whaaftei tele lava. Ia le nā Samoa, wa mai atu, ia lisi vaianga o le tātou wha talanoanga, I le wharatua ia Emele o stasi fo o fongo le tātou porkalame nei. Now, the handsome and good-looking gentleman that I have with me this afternoon for Thomas and Benjamin O'Connor as the designer for before anything is built. Now, any of you, or perhaps Thomas, if you could lead us, what is the difference between a minor dwelling and a sleep out? Lale se singo o a fo yo no fuanga ye leo le a tau mawhai nei e fausi e tua.
Severe. So this question, I'll hand this over to Ben. He'll explain the difference between a sleep out and a minor dwelling.
Right. All right, Benjamin. There you go. So
really, it's the cooking
what is
facility.
The difference between building a minor dwelling and a sleep out at the backyard?
It's really the cooking facility that determines whether it's that sleep out or the minor dwelling.
Right.
Minor dwelling can be operated by itself, whereas a sleep out is secondary to the house. Typically, it just contains sleeping, like rooms for sleeping, as opposed to some where a family could live, perhaps, or be rented out. So that's the main difference. Typically, a sleep out is a lot smaller than a minor dwelling. Just due to the nature of its purpose.
Now, the purpose of the nature of the purpose of this minor dwelling, is it self-contained with a toilet, a bathroom, and everything?
That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct. So yeah, a minor dwelling can operate as a house. So to have all the bathroom facilities, kitchen facilities, laundry facilities, and a bedroom or two for sleeping. Whereas a sleep out purely is a sleep, just for somewhere to sleep, like a sleep out.
Yeah.
And it relies on that house to operate, so you can't have all those other facilities in that space. And typically up until this point, or early next year, there's been allowances for being able to build sleep outs up to a certain size. Next year they're bringing in new rules which allow you to go up to sort of that 70 square metre minor dwelling, which is very exciting for both designers and builders. it's going to allow a lot of possibilities.
So you're meaning that they are two totally different dwelling with their own different purposes. One is self-maintained and contained, and the other depends on the main house with all other services in terms of toiletries, bathroom, and kitchen. So what's the difference in terms of cost in building a minor dwelling and building a sleep out?
Okay, so I think this is a question for me.
Yes. Go ahead, Thomas.
So I'm sure Ben has experience in this side as well for costings, because he sits across, and he also does a lot of the design side. But for us, seeing costings between a minor dwelling and a sleep out is quite significant in the pricing. Or the sleep out, so it's just a room for you to stay in, and no toiletry. So with minor dwelling, there's a lot more involved in your services, or and then same for my kitchen or my kitchen for minor dwelling. So there's a lot more involved in the minor dwelling. So the difference in cost in Mawalunga, all the cost or the minor dwelling, not the sleep out. Also, all the cost of the minor dwelling involve your council. For the council, if I consent, and this is where Ben comes in, he has to handle all of that side as well. So with the sleep out, it doesn't really require the consent, but it still needs, it still requires design, which is, it's still good to have that design as well, bespoke design for you, Malu Fale, Malu Fanua. That's why we always recommend our process where we have been involved as well in this, in that process. But there is a big difference between the two. For example, I'll give you a quick example. A sleep out can range between 15 to 25, 30,000 for a simple sleep out. And then you have a minor dwelling that can go between 100 to 300,000, depending on the design and the complexities involved with that particular design. But it all comes down to the location of minor dwelling or your sleep out, and also all the design as well. So that's why it's good having a team or someone like Ben who understands, good design that's going to save you money, because it really comes down to how it looks, materials you find in minor dwelling or the sleep out. That's what determines the price or
Malu. So, because I've just spoken with Emele, while applying for pre-approved funds for the minor dwelling as well as the sleep out, you gentlemen are involved in the earlier process if the bank needs the design and also the blueprint of it. So how is it that possible in terms of time to do the design before the banks wants to see and cite it?
Okay, so this is a question for Ben, but our normal process for when we meet a client before Emele. So Emele will meet the client to talk about pre-approval.
Right.
Once Emele will pre-approval from the bank, then they approach us. And it's very good for us to be involved right in the beginning. Because after we finish our stage, our initial meeting with the client, that's when we have Ben involved. So I'll get Ben to explain what he does in terms of his process.
Ben?
So very early on, we'll do a quick site analysis to see if it's actually possible. We'll check, whether it's an extension, a renovation, or someone's looking to put a minor dwelling or a full dwelling at the back. It's a matter of checking what services are on site, the setbacks, certain rules around, particularly with the exemption that I mentioned before. There's other restrictions around those. But typically within the Auckland setting, there's several different zones that we have to take into account, and those setbacks and building coverages, etc. And those are important even with the new granny flat rules that are coming into play, that they still comply with those rules. We're still yet to find out whether it's those rules in particular, but I imagine it will be those planning rules. So we'll start off with the site analysis, then we'll do a site measure of the house, and then from there, the concept design. Depending on the complexity, there may be another design stage that we will take. And often at that point, we'll make a few construction assumptions. And with those assumptions, Thomas will go away and engage his QS to do a pricing for the project. And at that point, then I believe that you get a mortgage broker involved, and then the bank comes back to us as to whether they can go ahead with that project or not. Once you've got the approval to go ahead, then we look at doing the detailed design process. And it's pretty much setting up a building consent set that is submitted to the council. It's not just a drawing set, it's a whole bunch of other application documentation, specifications. Other consultants are often engaged. You might have a geotech consultant, a structural engineer, truss designer. There's all sorts depending on the design. So the further and further you get through the process, the more complicated it gets and the more people that are needed to be involved. But it's important early on to do that site assessment so that you're not wasting a whole bunch of time through that process if it's not even possible. You just need to make sure you have the right team on early on.
So, in other words, you are the person that deals with building consent application and all that from the council?
That's right. So I'll take them right from the beginning. I'll be that one consultant that sticks with it from the beginning to the end. Typically, I'll take it up to that detailed design approved building consent stage. And at that point, someone like Thomas would take it on and see it through the construction. But even through the construction stage, I'll still be involved from time to time, depending on if there's further questions, construction questions.
So which one of you, Benjamin or Thomas, deals with the time frame of how it is built right from the start to the finish point?
So that's we both work together on this whole process, Severe.
Yeah.
The build schedule is done by us, but council, with the schedule of council has their own schedule in terms of building consent applications. And Ben can answer that in more detail if you want as well, Severe. But the main point we're trying to make is this whole process from start to finish, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved, and a lot of value engineering that needs to happen right from the beginning with the right people involved. Like, for example, like Ben, we work really closely with Ben to talk about design, to talk about how we can pull back cost if need be. And you need people or consultants or designers like Ben, or even in our team that can work closely with our clients to achieve the minimum achieve. That's why in the beginning we set a budget, and then the design needs to go around that budget as much as we can. And sometimes we have a budget, and then the client wants a design that's like a Sky Tower design, but the budget is actually like a Toyota budget. So it's important. It's important to set expectations right from the beginning. That's why it's really important for us to be involved right from the beginning.
Process,
Early process. Yeah.
Fantastic. Alea whafonga mai tātou tunu whafonga Samoa. Ia o tama whanau ia lea tunu o lo whaia ngā luenga nei e leise me ta o se Mickey Mouse. O le sunga a Thomas o le li kamuta. O le olu o tasi 555 tolu o na wha. Olu o tasi 555 tolu o na wha ma o ia fo ileo le a whaafsota ia i lātou le nei lātou te whaia le design fo le ma fua le ngā luenga pe o tūlanga tusi o le ngā luenga. E ama whai fo i ona lātou apalai i meo pe mita ma whaatanga mai ai e le pulenga whai tu malo po le council. Ia le whai o le mere ai kere ngofa o e ngofo wha pipi ia kule mea wha pipi angele mea i lo whane. Now, from your experience, is it worth building a minor dwelling or a sleep out, or perhaps added a room to the main house?
I'll let you go first, Ben, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say that it really depends on the situation.
Right.
What is the family looking for? Are they looking to have a space where they can grow their family? Maybe they've got a need for additional bedrooms. That might mean an extension. Whether they want a separate space for that sleep out. I think typically in most cases you probably want the bedroom connected to the house rather than being completely separate, because then you've got other conditions to take into account like rain. Then the other thing with these minor dwellings that are coming in next year, those can be rented out separately. So maybe that need is an additional income, and making use of that backyard or front yard. So it really depends on the needs of the family. But yeah, that's something we talk through right at the beginning.
Right.
The building process and design process is quite complicated. So it's nice to sit down with the family and have a discussion about their needs. Sometimes they don't fully understand their need, and to have someone come by and listen to them discuss their day-to-day life and stuff. Sometimes you can come through and be like, maybe you don't need this space, but we can achieve it by doing this. So yeah, it really just depends on the family and their needs.
So the line of communication is pretty much very important with the family to know exactly the purpose and the need before you go ahead and design and build. Isn't that right?
Exactly, you're right.
All right. For families looking to build a sleep out or a minor dwelling, where can we visit to view some of the finished products and ideas and costings and some of the sample and models of your work that has already been done?
Okay, I'll answer this one first before Ben. But for the simplest one, Savia, is just websites.
Yeah.
You can visit any of our websites to have a look at some of the completed work we've finished.
Wow.
You can also visit home shows as well to have a look at some of the models out there. But in terms of costings, it all depends on your particular need. There's not one size fits all. And there are systems out there like that sell online where you can see, for example, Savia, if I have ice to sleep out, it will say online, or or something like that. But right there and below, you don't see the little fine print left not including this, not including this, not including this, or not including this. Whereas if you approach someone like me and Ben and our team, we give you that trade summary or that trade breakdown so that you understand everything is included in this. This is what you're going to get. This is how much the whole job is going to cost. Versus if I go something online, it might not necessarily be the full cost of everything. So to answer your question, yeah, websites, you can have a look there for some of the finished work, or just online. There's plenty of information online. And then Ben, is there any way you think you can suggest for people to have a look at?
You've probably covered all of it, really. I was just going to say, looking at Instagram or social media websites, and typically in terms of cost, it really depends on that finished material. Cladding it can range in cost from one cladding to the next. So internal finishes, etc. So it really is probably one of those things where you do a little bit of research and have a look and see what you like, and then engage with the designer and builder, and maybe looking at their websites to see the type of work that they do and what they've gone through in the past, because that makes a big difference.
Right. Yeah. O le nā, ua tawalunga tuai ia le tātou talanoanga. A wā o se tasi lava lo fia maua le fesoswani mai le sunga a Thomas, ia mwhaiwhai ona maua I nā ma le li o lo o tustusia mafuafua ia le ngāruenga, Benjamin O'Connor. And Thomas, e te maua le telefoni o le olua tasi, 554 tolu ono wha, toi whaafonga le numero le nā, au ike ngofo masuise mea lau whale, ke li wala au mai a Thomas ma Benjamin. Olua tasi, 554 tolu ono wha, e taunga tā, le mea tutongi e le sala pēr e nofo ma whaile mea le nā, le ngate le nā, a o le teimi e te nofo e wha tau le whale, e le se value o le mea le nā le na e whausia e au noa, Masepe Mita Efatinoi. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I always have that pleasure of listening to and learning new things from your career and your profession. Yeah, thank you, Thomas and Benjamin O'Connor. Final words from you, Benjamin, and then Connor.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been great talking this through. There's a lot of things changing. It's an exciting time. So looking forward to seeing what's happening next year with these exemption rules, because I think there's going to be some great pieces of work that come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A pleasure having you on the show. Thomas, sao noanga munuri mai lau sunga.
Taylor Severe, as always, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to be here, to be able to help our people understand what it's like to really build a home. Like I said, if you guys want to reach out to us anytime, give us a call on the mobile that was provided by Severe, and then we'll be able to link you with Ben as well from 4C Studio, who can help you guys with any of your design needs. But yeah, Taylor Severe, look forward to the next time as well. Take care. God bless.
Yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. Looking forward to the next time. But for the meantime, we are telling there, thank you, Benjamin. Looking forward to seeing you the next episode of our Malu I Fale. Mo Samoa. E whaasui fui e le teminei. Whaasui fua. Le sunga ia Thomas ia whapea fui ia lona soatau. Le sunga ia Benjamin O'Connor te mau le telefoni le nei o lua tasi 552 tolu ono wha. O le tāua le nei mea Samoa. O le Malu I Fale. O le fo e whao ngā tama whanau le tunu le ngata ia Emele Palamo. I lana telefoni o le olua fitu valu tolu fitu valu fa valu o. Ia, ma Thomas i le olua tasi 552 tolu ono fa.